All right, excellent. Bless you. All right. So welcome to session two, everyone, and let's jump right into it. Thank you, everybody, for joining this morning and this afternoon. It's nice to be with you. Okay. So this week's session is all about Ethereum, and I kind of want to be able to see you all. There you all. Ethereum as both a new kind of economic infrastructure and digital infrastructure. And what that means, last session we went into inflation and fiat, and why crypto started. What is Bitcoin? Okay, look at my computer moving slower than me. And so by the end of today, you'll be able to use crypto confidently, explain the basics of what is the blockchain, differentiate Bitcoin versus Ethereum, specifically what are smart contracts, which are essentially what make Ethereum what it is, as opposed to Bitcoin, evaluate crypto projects, really understand what real use cases are, meaning they'll be able to go beyond the theory of crypto as this internet thing, but really thinking about how is it actually solving real world problems. If anyone wants me to slow down, you're welcome to raise your hand. I can see you all, and I'll be attending to my own pace a little bit as well. And by the end of this class, you'll also be able to protect yourselves, understanding what scams are in crypto, as well as understand if crypto fits your life and it's the kind of thing that you'd be interested in participating in or, investing in a long-term kind of way. All right. So last session, we explored the why money is losing value, why the dollar system is shifting, why Bitcoin exists as a response, and the real stakes that exist around these kinds of powers. Essentially, we answered why does crypto exists. And today we're going to answer the how and what. We're going to do that by actually using crypto, understanding how the blockchain works, learning what you can build on Ethereum, as well as so there won't be someone who's living on crypto infrastructure per se, but we'll certainly get to learn about what is a scam versus what is not. Okay. So did anyone here actually set up a crypto wallet from the last time we met?
No.
That's okay. I got that, Marianne.
And no, Carol.
No, from Daria.
Okay, got that. I got that, Miriam. Yvette, what about yourself? I know that Mom and Gabrielle have wallets on their phones. Okay.
Did we cover how to do that? Because I wasn't left with that was like an assignment.
Oh,
It was our assignment to figure it out.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was.
exactly.
Okay, I completely missed that. Okay,
Clearly,
thank you.
we did not figure it out. You may have to walk us through that.
But that's okay. I have no qualms with that. Um, well, for the sake of time,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that in this moment. If you want to go on the App Store, I can invite you to download the Rainbow Wallet to your phone right now. Um, and it can download in the background, but you're not gonna need it right now in this moment.
What wallet is that?
It's called Rainbow.
Rainbow?
Hmm.
Like a rainbow.
Like the one that comes after the storm.
Wonderful. Thank you. You're not going to download it now. I'm going to look at it later.
Okay, that's fine. For people that were, I was simply giving them a moment. That's all.
Maceo, is that what we call it? Rainbow wallet?
You don't even have to put the word wallet. You can just put Rainbow, most likely, on the App Store.
Huh.
It's actually called Rainbow Ethereum Wallet on the App Store.
Thanks, Marianne.
Welcome. Okay.
Hmm. I don't get anything when I put that in. I get kids' games.
Okay. Right.
Rainbow Dash Ethereum Wallet.
Oh, the dash. Okay.
Actually, I'm sorry. Rainbow hyphen Rainbow space hyphen space, Ethereum.
And I assert that, I won't even say I assert.
No, I get Disney Solitaire. Oh, wait, I found it. Thank you. I got it.
And should we select get a new wallet?
What did you say?
Now there's a choice to, we can choose get a new wallet. Is it what we're supposed to do?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Give me that again, Maceo.
Yep.
Rainbow
Wallet, Rainbow.
wallet.
Mhm.
All right.
And so once you do have your wallet set up, you'll have like a numerical code at the very top. But beneath that, it'll tell you your wallet balance, which should say zero. Then you'll be able to see buy, swap, send, and copy.
Hmm.
And I just invite you to press copy, and then you can paste that code directly into our WhatsApp chat.
Oh, we need it now?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes.
Oh, I think I could do it later. I wasn't.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
and
This,
Maceo, mine's not loading properly, so I can't go any further until I figure out what's wrong.
okay. Well, I simply didn't want to leave you hanging if you're already there.
Yeah, thanks.
hmm
So my choice is, how do I want to back up my wallet? Cloud or manual? Hmm?
you can click cloud. That's fine. Okay. So I guess I should state that having these wallets set up certainly would have made a difference as we started the class, given that being able to kind of see how it functions is kind of where things initiate, and that not being present kind of makes it harder for me to walk you all through it. And I can also own that I did not follow up to make sure that you all were prepared to actually take on these steps. Hmm. So, in order to accommodate that, I will. Hmm. Okay, what I'm gonna say.
Can you just demo on the recording and then we
Yeah,
can watch it
demo
later?
and we can watch it later.
Okay, yeah, I can demo. I guess it feels
Sorry,
strange to
Maceo,
me.
sorry. What did sorry, what are you supposed to copy, you said?
On the top, there should be a button that says copy. Like there should be like four buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the one on the right side should say copy, and all you have to do is click it, and it copies like the address to which you would receive cryptocurrency.
And I should
Um,
add it in the chat?
yeah, yeah, I was saying you
Okay.
can paste it in the WhatsApp chat.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess you all can kind of see my phone potentially. I'm not really clear if you can. But this is kind of what the app will look like on your phone when it is set up. And this app is like, I don't really, I think that I'm going to use my computer instead, which is a little bit different, but still shows the point. Okay, so here you all can see my screen still, right? So you can see this, what I'm opening. Did you see this fox on my screen?
MetaMask.
Yeah, exactly. So MetaMask is the first wallet I actually used when I got into crypto. I appreciate the invitation to just kind of demonstrate here on the computer or in general. I don't need to save anything right now. And so you can use a wallet from your computer, from your phone. Um, what it offered you about backing up, you can actually take those 12 words, if you do a manual backup, and actually log in on any device into any wallet application. And so you could actually design your own application for being able to like your own wallet. And then people could go and download your app and still plug into the exact same wallet because it's not actually your money's not stored inside the application, but it's actually just an interface for engaging the blockchain, right? And so here you can see the tokens I have in my wallet. I have some of these Optimism tokens. Some This BNB is Binance, which is like a Chinese blockchain. You can see I have some Ethereum, Constitution DAO. Constitution DAO was actually one of the first orgs I joined when I got into crypto. They were fundraising money to buy one of the printed copies of the US Constitution. And so people like bought all these people tokens, and then this rich guy, Ken Griffith, came and actually outbid us on the Constitution. But it was just an opportunity to showcase the crowdfunding potential of the technology. Okay, let me show you, right. And so as I mentioned, like the money in there isn't actually in a bank account or in the app itself. So the app can't freeze my money. Only I can access it. Even the app company doesn't control it. And it's not like fiat. Like I can have stable coins like USDC coins in my wallet, or tokens, USDC tokens, but that's not what's there. So it's not even government printed money. It's actually like programmable money, right? And so though there's not Bitcoin in my wallet, all those different tokens or currencies people have launched on the internet, and have found different use cases. Okay. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I will find a way to work in making that more accessible ahead of next class that you all are supported and able to really experience that with a little bit more ease. But for the time being, that's kind of what the interface can look like. If you have it set up on your phone, you'll be able to see. And if you didn't get your wallet set up in this session, if you can just put a message in the WhatsApp chat, then I'll come back and just follow up with you to make sure you do have it set up. But the next component is really doing a deep dive on the blockchain. So right now we're about to watch a 12-minute video, and your job is to figure out how to explain the blockchain to your grandmother in 1 minute. You can't use jargon and you can't use technical terms. And the question to answer, can anyone cheat the system? And if not, why not? After the video, we're going to come back here and we're going to explain it to each other. All
Okay.
right. And I'm excited about this video. This video is actually the video that I first watched when I got into crypto, that my college roommate showed me. And so it really is, in my opinion, it's a part of how I learned. And I think it really does an excellent job of demonstrating what exactly the blockchain is with visuals that are easy to understand.
Maceo,
Yes.
there's a big square like block out on the screen that I don't know if anybody else can see it. Right now it's on the left-hand side of the screen and it's in front of your graphics.
Is it
Uh,
is
I
it
have that. I have
is
that
it
too.
this?
yeah, what is that?
That's you all on my screen. Sorry.
Well,
Yeah, I
that's
got
better. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Now it's smaller.
Well, at least it's not in the way.
yeah, well, I definitely don't want it to be in the way. Yeah, sorry. That was my ability to see all of you.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
No, thanks for letting me know, because obviously I did not know that you could.
Imagine someone shows you a list of transactions and they say, hey, I found a special number so that when you put that number at the end of this list,
I'm bringing this back. I'm clear that having this ready to go would have made a difference. Okay. Can you all see the YouTube page on my screen?
Yeah.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
what does it mean to have a Bitcoin? Many people have heard of Bitcoin, that it's a fully digital currency with no government to issue it, and that no banks need to manage accounts and verify transactions. And also that no one really knows who invented it. And yet, many people don't know the answer to this question. at least not in full. To get there, and to make sure that the technical details underlying the answer actually feel motivated, what we're going to do is walk through step by step how you might have invented your own version of Bitcoin. We'll start with you keeping track of payments with your friends using a communal ledger, and then as you start to trust your friends and the world around you less and less, and if you're clever enough to bring in a few ideas from cryptography to help circumvent the need for trust, what you end up with is what's called a cryptocurrency. You see, Bitcoin is just the first implemented example of a cryptocurrency, and now there are thousands more on exchanges with traditional currencies. Walking the path of inventing your own can help to set the foundations for understanding some of the more recent players in the game, and recognizing when and why there's room for different design choices. In fact, one of the reasons I chose this topic is that in the last year, there's been a huge amount of attention and investment and, well, honestly, hype directed at these currencies. And I'm not going to comment or speculate on the current or future exchange rates, but I think we'd all agree that anyone looking to buy a cryptocurrency should really know what it is. And I don't just mean in terms of analogies with vague connections to gold mining. I mean an actual direct description of what the computers are doing when we send, receive, and create cryptocurrencies. One thing worth stressing, by the way, is that even though you and I are going to dig into the details here, and that takes meaningful time, you don't actually need to know those details if you just want to use the cryptocurrency. Just like you don't need to know the details of what happens under the hood when you swipe a credit card. Like any digital payment, there's lots of user-friendly applications that let you just send and receive the currencies without thinking about what's going on. The difference is that the backbone underlying this is not a bank that verifies transactions. Instead, it's a clever system of decentralized trustless verification based on some of the math born in cryptography. But to start, I want you to actually set aside the thought of cryptocurrencies and all that just for a few minutes. We're going to begin the story with something more down to earth: ledgers and digital signatures. If you and your friends exchange money pretty frequently, paying your share of the dinner bill and such, it can be inconvenient to exchange cash all the time. So you might keep a communal ledger that records all of the payments that you intend to make some point in the future. Alice pays Bob $20, Bob pays Charlie $40, things like that. This ledger is going to be something public and accessible to everyone, like a website where anyone can go and just add new lines. And let's say that at the end of every month, you all get together, look at the list of transactions, and settle up. If you spent more than you received, you put that money in the pot, and if you received more than you spent, you take that money out. So the protocol for being part of this very simple system might look like this. Anyone can add lines to the ledger, and at the end of every month, you all get together and settle up. Now, one problem with a public ledger like this is that anyone can add a line. So what's to prevent Bob from going and writing Alice pays Bob $100 without Alice approving? How are we supposed to trust that all of these transactions are what the sender meant them to be? Well, this is where the first bit of cryptography comes in: digital signatures. Like handwritten signatures, the idea here is that Alice should be able to add something next to that transaction that proves that she has seen it and that she's approved of it. And it should be infeasible for anyone else to forge that signature. At first, it might seem like a digital signature shouldn't even be possible. I mean, whatever data makes up that signature can just be read and copied by a computer, so how do you prevent forgeries? Well, the way this works is that everyone generates what's called a public key-private key pair, each of which looks like some string of bits. The private key is sometimes also called a secret key, so that we can abbreviate it as SK while abbreviating the public key as PK. Now, as the name suggests, this secret key, it's something you want to keep to yourself. In the real world, your handwritten signature looks the same no matter what document you're signing. But a digital signature is actually much stronger, because it changes for different messages. It looks like some string of ones and zeros, commonly something like 256 bits, and altering the message even slightly completely changes what the signature on that message should look like. Speaking a little more formally, producing a signature involves a function that depends both on the message itself and on your private key. The private key ensures that only you can produce that signature, and the fact that it depends on the message means that no one can just copy one of your signatures and then forge it on another message. Hand in hand with this is a second function used to verify that a signature is valid. And this is where the public key comes into play. All it does is output true or false to indicate if this was a signature produced by the private key associated with the public key that you're using for verification. I won't go into the details of how exactly both these functions work, but the idea is that it should be completely infeasible to find a valid signature if you don't know the secret key. Specifically, there's no strategy better than just guessing and checking random signatures, which you can check using the public key that everyone knows. Now think about how many signatures there are with a length of 256 bits. That's 2 to the power of 256. This is a stupidly large number. To call it astronomically large would be giving way too much credit to astronomy. In fact, I made a supplemental video devoted just to illustrating what a huge number this is. Right here, let's just say that when you verified that a signature against a given message is valid, you can feel extremely confident that the only way someone could have produced it is if they knew the secret key associated with the public key you used for verification. Now, making sure that people sign transactions on the ledger is pretty good, but there's one slight loophole. If Alice signs a transaction like Alice pays Bob $100, even though Bob can't forge Alice's signature on a new message, he could just copy that same line as many times as he wants. I mean, that message signature combination remains valid. To get around this, what we do is make it so that when you sign a transaction, the message has to also include some sort of unique ID associated with that transaction. That way, if Alice pays Bob $100 multiple times, each one of those lines on the ledger requires a completely new signature. Alright, great. Digital signatures remove a huge aspect of trust in this initial protocol. But even still, if you were to really do this, you would be relying on an honor system of sorts. Namely, you're trusting that everyone will actually follow through and settle up in cash at the end of each month. What if, for example, Charlie racks up thousands of dollars in debt and just refuses to show up? The only real reason to revert back to cash to settle up is if some people, I'm looking at you, Charlie, owe a lot of money. So maybe you have the clever idea that you never actually have to settle up in cash as long as you have some way to prevent people from spending too much more than they take in. Maybe what you do is start by having everyone pay $100 into the pot, and then have the first few lines of the ledger read, Alice gets $100, Bob gets $100, Charlie gets $100, etc. Now, just don't accept any transactions where someone is spending more than they already have on that ledger. For example, if the first two transactions are Charlie pays Alice $50 and Charlie pays Bob $50, if he were to try to add Charlie pays you $20, that would be invalid as if he had never signed it. Notice, this means that verifying a transaction requires knowing the full history of transactions up to that point. And this is, more or less, also going to be true in cryptocurrencies, though there is a little room for optimization. What's interesting here is that this step removes the connection between the ledger and actual physical US dollars. In theory, if everyone in the world was using this ledger, you could live your whole life just sending and receiving money on this ledger without ever having to convert to real US dollars. In fact, to emphasize this point, let's start referring to the quantities on the ledger as ledger dollars, or LD for short. You are, of course, free to exchange ledger dollars for real US dollars. For example, maybe Alice gives Bob a $10 bill in the real world. In exchange for him adding and signing the transaction, Bob pays Alice 10 ledger dollars to this communal ledger. But exchanges like that, they're not going to be guaranteed by the protocol. It's now more analogous to how you might exchange dollars for euros, or any other currency on the open market. It's just its own independent thing. This is the first important thing to understand about Bitcoin, or any other cryptocurrency. What it is a ledger. The history of transactions is the currency. Of course, with Bitcoin, money doesn't enter the ledger with people buying in using cash. I'll get to how new money enters the ledger in just a few minutes. But before that, there's actually an even more significant difference between our current system of ledger dollars and how cryptocurrencies work. So far, I've said that this ledger is in some public place, like a website where anyone can add new lines. But that would require trusting a central location, namely, who hosts the website, who controls the rules of adding new lines. To remove that bit of trust, we'll have everybody keep their own copy of the ledger. Then when you want to make a transaction, like Alice pays Bob 100 ledger dollars, what you do is broadcast that out into the world for people to hear and to record on their own private ledgers. But unless you do something more, this system is absurdly bad. How could you get everyone to agree on what the right ledger is? When Bob receives a transaction, like Alice pays Bob 10 ledger dollars, how can he be sure that everyone else received and believes that same transaction? That he'll be able to later on go to Charlie and use those same 10 ledger dollars to make a transaction? Really, imagine yourself just listening to transactions being broadcast. How can you be sure that everyone else is recording the same transactions and in the same order? This is really the heart of the issue. This is an interesting puzzle. Can you come up with a protocol for how to accept or reject transactions, and in what order, so that you can feel confident that anyone else in the world who's following that same protocol has a personal ledger that looks the same as yours? This is the problem addressed in the original Bitcoin paper. At a high level, the solution that Bitcoin offers is to trust whichever ledger has the most computational work put into it. I'll take a moment to explain exactly what that means. It involves this thing called a cryptographic hash function. The general idea that we'll build to is that if you use computational work as a basis for what to trust, you can make it so that fraudulent transactions and conflicting ledgers would require an infeasible amount of computation to bring about. Again, I'll remind you that this is getting well into the weeds beyond what anyone would need to know just to use a currency like this. But it's a really cool idea, and if you understand it, you understand the heart of Bitcoin and of other cryptocurrencies. So first things first, what's a hash function? The inputs for one of these functions can be any kind of message or file, it really doesn't matter. And the output is a string of bits with some kind of fixed length, like 256 bits. This output is called the hash or the digest of the message, and the intent is that it looks random. It's not random, it always gives the same output for a given input. But the idea is that if you slightly change the input, maybe editing just one of the characters, the resulting hash changes completely. In fact, for the hash function that I'm showing here, called SHA-256, the way the output changes as you slightly change that input is entirely unpredictable. You see, this is not just any hash function, it's a cryptographic hash function. That means it's infeasible to compute in the reverse direction. If I show you some string of ones and zeros and ask you to find an input so that the SHA-256 hash of that input gives this exact string of bits, you will have no better method than to just guess and check. And again, if you want a feel for how much computation would be needed to go through 2 to the 256 guesses, just take a look at the supplement video. I actually had way too much fun writing that thing. You might think that if you just really dig into the details of how exactly this function works, you could reverse engineer the appropriate input without having to guess and check. But no one has ever figured out a way to do that. Interestingly, there's no cold, hard, rigorous proof that it's hard to compute in the reverse direction. And yet, a huge amount of modern security depends on cryptographic hash functions and the idea that they have this property. If you were to look at what algorithms underlie the secure connection that your browser is making with YouTube right now, or that it makes with your bank, you will likely see the name SHA-256 show up in there. For right now, our focus will just be on how such a function can prove that a particular list of transactions is associated with a large amount of computational effort. Imagine someone shows you a list of transactions, and they say, hey, I found a special number so that when you put that number at the end of this list of transactions and apply SHA-256 to the entire thing, the first 30 bits of that output are all zeros. How hard do you think it was for them to find that number? Well, for a random message, the probability that a hash happens to start with 30 successive zeros is 1 in 2 to the 30, which is about 1 in a billion. And because SHA-256 is a cryptographic hash function, the only way to find a special number like that is just guessing and checking. So this person almost certainly had to go through about 1 billion different numbers before finding this special one. And once you know that number, it's really quick to verify. You just run the hash and see that there are 30 zeros. So in other words, you can verify that they went through a large amount of work, but without having to go through that same effort yourself. This is called a proof of work. And importantly, all of this work is intrinsically tied to the list of transactions. If you change one of those transactions, even slightly, it would completely change the hash. So you'd have to go through another billion guesses to find a new proof of work, a new number that makes it so that the hash of the altered list together with this new number starts with 30 zeros. So now think back to our distributed ledger situation. Everyone is there broadcasting transactions, and we want a way for them to agree on what the correct ledger is. As I said, the core idea behind the original Bitcoin paper is to have everyone trust whichever ledger has the most work put into it. The way this works is to first organize a given ledger into blocks, where each block consists of a list of transactions together with a proof of work. That is, a special number so that the hash of the whole block starts with a bunch of zeros. For the moment, let's say that it has to start with, 60 zeros, but later we'll return back to a more systematic way you might want to choose that number. In the same way that a transaction is only considered valid when it's signed by the sender, a block is only considered valid if it has a proof of work. And also, to make sure that there's a standard order to these blocks, we'll make it so that a block has to contain the hash of the previous block at its header. That way, if you were to go back and change any one of the blocks, or to swap the order of 2 blocks, it would change the block that comes after it, which changes that block's hash, which changes the one that comes after it, and so on. That would require redoing all of the work, finding a new special number for each of these blocks that makes their hashes start with 60 zeros. Because blocks are chained together like this, instead of calling it a ledger, it's common to call it a blockchain. As part of our updated protocol, we'll now allow anyone in the world to be a block creator. What that means is that they're going to listen for transactions being broadcast, collect them into some block, and then do a whole bunch of work to find a special number that makes the hash of that block start with 60 zeros. Then once they find it, they broadcast out the block that they found. To reward a block creator for all this work, when she puts together a block, we'll allow her to include a very special transaction at the top of it, in which she gets, say, 10 ledger dollars out of thin air. This is called the block reward, and it's an exception to our usual rules about whether or not to accept transactions. It doesn't come from anyone, so it doesn't have to be signed, and it also means that the total number of ledger dollars in our economy increases with each new block. Creating blocks is often called mining, since it requires doing a lot of work, and it introduces new bits of currency into the economy. But when you hear or read about miners, keep in mind that what they're really doing is listening for transactions, creating blocks, broadcasting those blocks, and getting rewarded with new money for doing so. From the miner's perspective, each block is kind of like a miniature lottery, where everyone is guessing numbers as fast as they can until one lucky individual finds a special number that makes the hash of the block start with many zeros, and they get the reward. For anyone else who just wants to use this system to make payments, instead of listening for transactions, they all start listening just for blocks being broadcast by miners and updating their own personal copies of the blockchain. Now, the key addition to our protocol is that if you hear 2 distinct blockchains with conflicting transaction histories, you defer to the longest one, the one with the most work put into it. If there's a tie, just wait until you hear an additional block that makes one of them longer. So even though there's no central authority and everyone is maintaining their own copy of the blockchain, if everyone agrees to give preference to whichever blockchain has the most work put into it, we have a way to arrive at decentralized consensus. To see why this makes for a trustworthy system, and to understand at what point you should trust that a payment is legit, it's actually really helpful to walk through exactly what it would take to fool someone using this system. Maybe Alice is trying to fool Bob with a fraudulent block. Namely, she tries to send him one that includes her paying him 100 ledger dollars, but without broadcasting that block to the rest of the network. That way, everyone else still thinks that she has those 100 ledger dollars. To do this, she would have to find a valid proof of work before all of the other miners, each working on their own block. And that could definitely happen. Maybe Alice just happens to win this miniature lottery before everyone else. But Bob is still going to be hearing the broadcasts made by other miners. So to keep him believing this fraudulent block, Alice would have to do all of the work herself to keep adding blocks on this special fork in Bob's blockchain that's different from what he's hearing from the rest of the miners. Remember, as per the protocol, Bob always trusts the longest chain that he knows about. Alice might be able to keep this up for a few blocks if just by chance she happens to find blocks more quickly than the rest of the miners on the network all combined. But unless she has close to 50% of the computing resources among all of the miners, the probability becomes overwhelming that the blockchain that all of the other miners are working on grows faster than the single fraudulent blockchain that Alice is feeding to Bob. So, after enough time, Bob's just going to reject what he's hearing from Alice in favor of the longer chain that everyone else is working on. Notice, that means that you shouldn't necessarily trust a new block that you hear immediately. Instead, you should wait for several new blocks to be added on top of it. If you still haven't heard of any longer blockchains, you can trust that this block is part of the same chain that everyone else is using. And with that, we've hit all the main ideas. This distributed ledger system, based on a proof of work, is more or less how the Bitcoin protocol works, and how many other cryptocurrencies work. There's just a few details to clear up. Earlier, I said that the proof of work might be to find a special number so that the hash of the block starts with 60 zeros. Well, the way the actual Bitcoin protocol works is to periodically change that number of zeros so that it should take, on average, 10 minutes to find a new block. So as there are more and more miners added to the network, the challenge actually gets harder and harder in such a way that this miniature lottery only has about one winner every 10 minutes. Many newer cryptocurrencies actually have much shorter block times than that. And all of the money in Bitcoin ultimately comes from some block reward. In the beginning, these rewards were 50 Bitcoin per block. There's actually a great website you can go to called Block Explorer that makes it easy to look through the Bitcoin blockchain. And if you look at the very first few blocks on the chain, they contain no transactions other than that 50 Bitcoin reward to the miner. But every 210,000 blocks, which is about every 4 years, that reward gets cut in half. So right now, the reward is 12.5 Bitcoin per block. And because this reward decreases geometrically over time, it means there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin in existence. However, this doesn't mean that miners will stop earning money. In addition to the block reward, miners can also pick up transaction fees. The way this works is that whenever you make a payment, you can purely optionally include a little transaction fee with it that's going to go to the miner of whichever block includes that payment. The reason you might do that is to incentivize miners to actually...
Can you all still hear this video?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. Carol, can you still see it? Carol texted me saying she couldn't see the video.
I just see the little airplane taking off.
Okay.
And it's been silent for a while.
We could hear it. No problem.
Did everyone did it?
No, I can see it fine.
Okay. Well, I'm just sharing my screen one more time. And we'll fill you in, Carol.
And I've reached the time where I need to go.
Okay, I got that as well.
Do you all go to school?
Daria, can you go on mute?
Sure.
Maceo, I need to go now. I'm sorry.
I got that. No, you don't need to apologize.
Oh.
Thank you for being here for the time you could be here.
Yeah.
And Maceo, can you put the link to this video in our WhatsApp chat?
Absolutely.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Thanks for your patience. All right. I'm gonna let the video play and then let's debrief.
include the transaction that you broadcast into the next block. You see, in Bitcoin, each block is limited to about 2,400 transactions, which many critics argue is unnecessarily restrictive. For comparison, Visa processes an average of about 1,700 transactions per second, and they're capable of handling more than 24,000 per second. This comparatively slow processing on Bitcoin makes for higher transaction fees, since that's what determines which transactions miners choose to include in a new block. All of this is far from a comprehensive coverage of cryptocurrencies. There are still many nuances and alternate design choices that I haven't even touched. But my hope is that this can provide a stable wait but why style tree trunk of understanding for anyone looking to add a few more branches with further reading. Like I said at the start, one of the motives behind this is that a lot of money has started flowing towards cryptocurrencies. And even though I don't want to make any claims about whether that's a good or bad investment, I really do think that it's healthy for people getting into the game to at least know the fundamentals of the technology. As always, my sincerest thanks to those of you making this channel possible on Patreon. I understand that not everyone is in a position to contribute, but if you're still interested in helping out, one of the best ways to do that is simply to share videos that you think might be interesting or helpful to others. I know you know that, but it really does help.
Okay, Maceo, there was a video that he said to share, that we could look at. Did you happen to write that down, or did anybody happen to write that down?
Sorry, I thought you could hear me. He was saying that people could share the link to this video to other people.
Yeah, there was a video that he said to look at inside of that video. Okay,
You mean
I'll
at
go
the end
through
of the
it
video,
again.
right?
Yeah, in the actual video.
You mean at the end of the video?
More to the more just a bit before you stopped it.
No, I'm not clear immediately.
Okay, I'll go through it again. No problem.
Okay, awesome. I just put the links to the video in the chat. But I am curious. So what became apparent to you all, to you ladies, out of watching that video?
Okay, I'll go first since my mic is on. Um,
Mhm.
I I did not. I don't know if I retained a lot, but I did get that everybody could create aspects of Bitcoin. That
Mm.
it's a computation that is not easily created, but can be created. I got that.
That's true. And so you're saying that you just got present to like the computation component of it, like this, like there's a word,
If you will, the math of it,
the cryptography. That's the word I was looking
the
for.
cryptography. That's it. Thank
Okay,
you.
excellent. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Mom, Miriam.
I have a thing that I will need to rewatch the video, but what I see, it's interesting. It's the concept of trust that the whole system we live in right now is based on the assumption that there is no trust. So, I mean, whether it's the banking system, I mean, the legal system, I mean, the whole regulation is based on the assumption that there's no trust. And that's what I get with whether it's the blockchain or even the cryptocurrency, it's a different starting point that you don't need to so it's not based on the lack of trust. There is already trust, and you build on that. So the concept of trust doesn't even exist. It has been eliminated with the so that's really the key difference that I see is that it's a whole system based on the assumption that okay, there is trust. So what can we create? What kind of transaction and blocks can we create based on that system? So now I see that, I mean, where the decentralized concept and the fact that there is no regulation comes from. because it's embedded in the system. You don't need to worry about that. I mean, that's what I
Mm.
get.
No, absolutely. They call it a trustless infrastructure. So you're exactly
Yeah.
correct. Is there anything else that showed up for you?
And also the different keys, signature keys. I
Hmm.
mean, what I see, I mean, now, I mean, what I see is I would say trusting the community because the longer the chain is, the more secure and trustworthy it is.
Mm.
So which means that it's an incentive for everyone or most people to mine and to create transactions on the ledgers. So that's it's very conceptual, but that's what I get so far.
Can you say more about the incentive to create transactions?
Yes, because the more, I mean, what I get is that the more transactions exist, the more ledgers and more people mine, and the longer the chain will be.
Mm.
And the longer the chain is, the more trust is in the system.
Yeah. Well, what I would
I think
can you
that's
hear
what
me?
I get so far. Yes, I can hear you. I don't know if it's accurate, but that's based on that video. That's what I see.
No, I think I mean, the only thing I was going to say to respond was that I think the component of I don't think there's an incentive for people to transact per se. Other
Mm-hmm.
than that, right? People are looking at this as a way to exist, like you said, outside of the existing. There is no truth financial infrastructure. Like this money exists and it's here and it's mine, as opposed to this money is there and it's mine until it's not mine. But I would say there's incentive to mine, but I wouldn't say there's incentive to transact because, as we saw in the first block, there were no transactions, right? But the block still processed, and so it's more of a matter of time until those blocks are processed, than it is really a matter of how many transactions happen. And over time, people have just discovered the reasonings of why they would want to transact in Bitcoin or accumulate Bitcoin. And so we see exponentially more transactions today because people are using it as a currency, as a store of value, just for trading day to day, trying to, arbitrage, et cetera. Mhm.
Thank
Yeah, but
you.
I appreciate your attention. I'm glad you got the trustless component, especially. I think that's like the really the heart of the whole thing that lets it be a decentralized infrastructure, is that we have made trust a not a non-negotiable, but a non-concern.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Is there anything there for you, Mom?
Well, some of the things that have already been said, but also it was interesting to finally understand what mining is. That was
Hmm.
a nebulous kind of concept that I um, now have an understanding of. So,
Okay, and so what's your understanding now?
um, that it's the numbers. It's going through these long chains of numbers. I don't know that I can explain it, but
You can say it to the best of your ability. There's no winning answer. I'm just asking you.
um, finding a number that matches a transaction is that
Hmm.
kind of is my understanding. But it's going through so many of those combinations of numbers. Um,
Yeah, it's like each block presents a math equation. In Bitcoin mining, essentially solving that math equation and then cementing that block into history. And any transactions that happen before that math equation is resolved end up on that block of the blockchain.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I'm glad that that's become more clear inside this conversation. All right, I'm gonna share my screen again so I can show you all the slides. And so, did you all? So for the first question is the network knowledge. So that you all get clear, for example, on how the blockchain knows like knows your balance. I want to be able to see you all. I hate that I can't see you all. Here we go. Now I can see you. You're on mute, Miriam.
I was just reading that question out loud.
Hmm.
So can you repeat the question? What did you say?
I was asking the first question. Okay, it's right here works.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. It was how does the network know my wallet has ETH there without a central bank? Or in this case, right, this whole thing was about Bitcoin more so. So how does the network
Is
know
it
that you have Bitcoin?
is it the proof of work? Is it because of the proof of work or
Let me make sure that I heard the question. How does the ledger know that you have Bitcoin? Okay.
Yeah, like how does it know that it's there, that it's in your wallet, that you own it? And Miriam, you said it's through the proof of work. Mom, Daria, do you have guesses or answers? Sorry, I don't know.
It's a
Might go over.
line on the
Go
ledger,
ahead.
showing a specific transaction that um, that Bitcoin has come into my wallet. No?
Hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
I,
go ahead, Daria.
I want to say it has a specific signature.
Mm. Well, all of you are partially correct. But what specifically is so is that on the blockchain, right, there is a signature which reflects the current balance, but there's also a history of all the balances that have ever existed in your wallet. And so all of those pieces of information come together to frame a picture of the present. Oh, there you are. You're in like some tunnel. It's nice to see you. It's like a money tunnel. Take me to the money tunnel. Hmm.
The train station
Um,
in DC.
oh, okay. I like that. And now the next question is, why are we unable to tamper with the balances of our wallets? Like, why couldn't I go in and say, no, I have $1 million. I don't have $1. Why can I not deceive the system?
Because the signature is precise.
And well, not quite because signature is precise, but it's actually because these blockchains hold a history of all the transactions, right? And so when the block is complete, that stuff is now cemented in every computer, which is also participating in the blockchain, has a history of our balances in the transactions. And so if I try to process a non-truth, then every other computer will recognize that my blockchain isn't the same as every other blockchain. And now
Mm.
it's out of sync, and I've been recognized as a fraudulent actor or a dysfunctional blockchain, not truly part of the blockchain. Hmm. And so it's kind of the system of all these different computers attesting to what's truth. And and so it's inside those blocks in that truth that what's so actually becomes recognized as valid through consensus. Are you following me?
Oh, yes.
yeah?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad.
Consensus is what makes it. I get it. I get it.
Hmm.
Okay.
And the longest blockchain is the blockchain which has consensus. That's why they talk about the longest blockchain, because there's computers around the world who have digested it as the current state of the blockchain and agreed to move on to the next block and are even processing the following blocks. And so it's not one computer that says this is the next block, but it's whichever computer is able to process that math and arrive at the cryptographic hash, which then goes in at the bottom of the block and starts the next block. And so the computers have agreed mutually this is the truth and are now working on the next block. And that's what has solidified the history as a history that is agreed upon. Okay.
You lost me again. Um, okay. I'm just gonna watch the video again until I get it.
Okay. Okay. And I invite you to call me and ask any questions as you watch as well.
Okay.
Okay, so now look at your transaction. So on Etherscan, okay, so we're gonna go on a little demo here. So Etherscan. So Etherscan is like what they call a block explorer. I've been doing a lot of stuff with AI over the past couple of days, and my computer's really tired of me trying to use it. So it's kind of slow. Etherscan.com. Oh, etherscan.io. Sure, correct me. But this website is a website where people can actually be able to go in and view information from the blockchain. And so it tells you up here okay, I'll put this down here. It tells you the exact price of Ethereum today, which or in this moment, which is just under $1,900. Gas is called Gwei, and Gwei is what you pay. Gas is what you pay anytime you transact on the blockchain. And so if I sent you some Bitcoin, I'd have to pay a small fee of Bitcoin, similar to like paying a toll on the highway or putting gas in my car, kind of keep the whole machine running. Um, this is like the total number of transactions that that have ever happened, I think. I'm not 100% clear. I don't spend a lot of time on this website. But what I do want is right to come down here to the latest block so you can kind of see. And so in this block, you can see there were 59 transactions that happened in this Ethereum block. So this isn't actually the Bitcoin block explorer. This is the Ethereum block explorer. Um, but it lets you see, right, the amount of fees people spent. So just under 0.002 ETH was spent in terms of gas fees just inside this block alone. And so what it means for it to be burnt is that uh, the when it's part of, I guess, what takes Ethereum out of circulation. And so he spoke about fiat. They're always printing more money, always printing more money. When we transact in Ethereum, a percentage of Ethereum always being taken out of circulation as well, with the vision of this actually being a deflationary currency. And so here you can see consensus info. And so you can't necessarily understand all of these things, but this is the information that people who are participating in the mining of Ethereum would interact with. And here, let me come to an easier place. So if I type in here, wethemedia.eth is kind of like a handle, kind of like a license plate. Like you can buy these different titles, .eth titles or other things like as like a domain similar to like etherscan.io is here. And that makes it, as opposed to you sending me like a long cryptographic address you texted in the WhatsApp chat. This .eth address would be easily legible, easy to remember thing you can type and send money to, or look up online and see someone's balance, for example. And so if we come down here, like this is my personal wallet that I normally use. And you can see like the balance of my wallet if you wanted to. And here on the blockchain, my total balance is $46.57. I'm not crypto rich if you're wondering. But this is how easy it is to actually navigate the blockchain and see, right? So if you know someone's wallet address, you all just send them in the WhatsApp chat. You could copy Daria's and paste it up here, or copy Miriam's and paste it up here, and you'd be able to always go and see the history of that wallet on chain, even down to its inception, right? So you ladies just created a brand new wallet, so I'm actually not sure if it would say that it's a brand new wallet, or if it would say that, or if it would just say nothing, actually. But you can see my wallet is 4 years, almost 5 years old. I funded it for the first time with Coinbase, and so it even lets you see where the money came from. And so, as opposed to some people like use their wallets and they'll try and create like be very secretive about where the money came from, because otherwise they maybe have to pay taxes, or it could be a threat to people knowing how much money they actually have, stuff like that. And so some people, maybe if they start a business or something like that, this is my ENS I bought, we some people will like maybe take like some people who are maybe selling drugs on the dark web in the past have maybe set up wallets that have never touched like their personal information and stuff like that. And it's all been funded through like business and stuff like that, as opposed to Coinbase. And so it's easier for them to maintain that anonymity. But you can kind of see the token transfers. And so this allows you to see what assets exist in here. If I've swapped things, so if I've sold my one Ethereum for, 1,800 US dollars, you'd be able to see that here. You'd be able to see what platform I use. Like Rainbow is the wallet I told you all about today. MetaMask is the wallet I opened up on my computer. And so it really does offer you a very wide amount of information. You can come down here to assets, and it'll even break down for you what tokens are in your wallet. Um, and so you can see like I have this Raid Guild token. Raid Guild is a DAO. They're like and there's some people here in Denver from Raid Guild, but it's an organization, essentially an agency, where you get these membership tokens, and they enable you to participate in this agency. They do like software engineering or design or go to market for other people, kind of like a consultancy that they designed as a decentralized organization that uses the blockchain as their wallet per se. Uh, And all of these different things are different blockchains. So Ethereum is the main blockchain. Most of these are building on, and Arbitrum is like what they call a layer two. And so it's supposed to be a thing that makes it cheaper to use Ethereum as opposed to paying, $50 to sign or transact on Ethereum. Arbitrum or Polygon or Base or Gnosis or Celo are intended to make those things actually cheaper by reducing the number of transactions that are on each blockchain. And it's actually an interesting conversation right now because people like some of the founders of Ethereum are actually trying to make these layer two solutions unnecessary by building their own internal scaling solutions. And so it's kind of disrupting, you might say, some of the business world around it all, which made being at this conference here in Denver a little bit more spicy and interesting, I would definitely say. Um, and then up here you can even see there's like this thing, I think it's called XMTP. And so people can message wallet to wallet. It's not a very frequently used thing. I'll tell you the truth. Like even if you open Rainbow Wallet, there's no built-in feature. But people can message you to your wallet. I don't use it, and if I have any messages, I won't find out today. But that kind of gives you a sense of how to use this thing. And even without your wallet, right, you could come down to transactions and actually be able to like interact directly with the blockchain through here. So, for example, how do I? So, let me backtrack. Let me backtrack. So I haven't used this a whole lot, but as opposed to even having to use your wallet, you would actually be able to send crypto through Etherscan, I believe, though I'm not sure how. Or if you've published NFTs on chain. So if I actually have made NFTs in the past, which I have, NFTs are non-fungible tokens, which means as opposed to like every dollar is the same, right? Every NFT is not the same. Like your house is not my house. They're non-fungible. Houses are non-fungible, whereas dollars are fungible. And so a lot of the artwork we've seen blow up over the last few years have been in that space, and people are actually able to change I guess, permissions that exist around them. But I'm gonna close this up. I'm gonna close this up so we can get away from Etherscan because I feel like this is a rabbit hole of things to tell you about. Yeah, Miriam, go ahead.
I was just wondering, it's not I mean, the ID or the identification number that we shared on in the chat. Is it the same as the public key or is it different?
Yeah, exactly. That's your public key.
That's the public key? Okay. Okay, so which means that when you create an account like that, let's say right now we are using Rainbow for Ethereum. So for each cryptocurrency, do you have a different public key and secret key, or is it a unique for everything?
Okay, so that's a really good question. And so it depends on the blockchain more than the cryptocurrency, right? Because there are millions of cryptocurrencies, but they're all on the Ethereum blockchain. And so for the Ethereum blockchain, you would have one public key and private key. And if you were to go on Bitcoin, you have a separate public key and private key. And if you were to go on, say, Solana, you'd also have a different public key and private key. So these are three different blockchains. Whereas just because you're going on a layer two of Ethereum doesn't like you would still have the same public key. Like my WeDemNiggas.eth. You could send me US dollar coins, you could send me Ethereum, you could send me Miriam coin, you could send me Dogecoin, you could send me like anything. But you couldn't send me Bitcoin to that address because Bitcoin is on a different ledger.
Okay, thank you.
No, thanks for the question. I appreciate the attention to detail. Okay. And so you can see that on the blockchain, you can see people's transactions. And here's the question, right? Is it a feature or a bug that we can see what everybody's doing online? And the answer is that it's a feature because as opposed to people being able to spend money without us knowing about it, or have money and us not know about it, or corruption, things like that, right? It is to the benefit of there to be more transparency around money, though. Maybe we don't want people to know how much money we have, right? You're still able to understand, for example, with organizations, right? We can trust them because we can understand how they're actually allocating funding. Are we allocating funding how we say we will, right? So now you can come participate in my new community called Crypto Clarity, and I'm going to say, oh, we're going to go fund farms in Denver, Colorado for a month. Then you can trust that, if you actually participate and spend money on our project, that money will get there, as opposed to, me being a Bernie Madoff and disappearing into the sunset with your money. And the smart contract even makes it such that, we have to agree that we're going to spend the money before it can even be distributed. And so it kind of removes that whole component of trust. I can't lie to you. I actually can't even act without your confidence and faith and agreement. And that's what smart contracts enable. Excellent. So next slide. So Bitcoin versus Ethereum. I know this bar is up here. So if you remember last week, or it wasn't last week now, it was like a few weeks ago. Um, Bitcoin is the bet that governments will keep printing money, and we want an asset that can't inflate. And Bitcoin then is the asset for protecting our wealth. It's a digital gold. And so Ethereum that's okay. I just won't be able to see you all. So Ethereum is a different bet, right? That it's not just about the money, but it's actually about the software, about the internet, about the infrastructure. So raise your hand if you ever paid a bank fee, paid a wire transfer, any of these things you can see here on the screen. I know you all have. Hands up, that's right. And so Ethereum is it. I see your thumbs up. Don't worry, Daria. I appreciate you being present with us.
I couldn't even find the hands up, so
Trying to get this thing to move on. Maybe I can swipe my fingers. Maybe I can scroll down. Um, the middleman economy. Yes, so this is exactly where we should be, but it's not loading, which is what I don't understand. Okay, perfect. So what if you could remove them, right? There we go. So it's about the middlemen. Uh, okay. This thing is kind of getting on my nerves. It skipped one of my slides, but I want you. Okay, there you go. And so we just talked about the fees, right? So now it's about what if we could remove all of those fees and so with smart contracts in the blockchain, as opposed to having, like, sure, you maybe pay a fee to transact and to sign, but where you don't pay a fee is when you want to buy your concert ticket, or when you want to send money home, or when you stream music, as opposed to having to interact with the company at scale. Right now, people can actually design applications which have their own financial infrastructure built in, right? This decentralized financial infrastructure. So now if you pay with crypto, you don't pay a credit card fee. And so that's a fee that does disappear. And in fact, the fee that you do pay is more likely than not less than 1 cent, unless you're like operating on like the most expensive day at the most expensive hour, on the most expensive chain. And that's kind of what these layer twos I mentioned earlier were designed to solve, right? And so maybe it would be $800 to do something on Ethereum on the busiest day 6 years ago. But then you can go on a layer two and you can do it for less than a cent. And so all of a sudden, you could send Miriam, you could send my mom $1, and pay no fees. So you could pay less than a cent in fees, as opposed to having to send money through like a money point, something like that, and have to deal with the fees that come along with that. hmm And a lot of people saw NFTs as a big movement because, as opposed to having to pay these different entities or middlemen, people can now put money directly in the hands for artists. And that's actually how I made a lot of money in this space. And so what if you could remove them, right? Now artists are able to make 100% of that money. You send money home, your family get 99% of that money, right? As I mentioned, with an artist, all of a sudden the band can support them directly. As you all saw at the end of that video I showed you, he was thanking everybody who contributes to his Patreon. And so it's a similar kind of mechanism, but even Patreon doesn't necessarily have to take a fee, and people can design what that fee is. And if you don't like the fee that Patreon has, you can launch your own Patreon with the blockchain and have no fee, because it's all open source technology. And so that's what this is all about. It's about having all of a sudden open source programmable infrastructure for money. And so even if somebody else does make one that costs you money, you can go and make your own, especially now with AI, with little to no money and time. So Bitcoin versus Ethereum. So Bitcoin is the layer one for money, It's a store of value. It tracks ownership, moves money without banks. It does one thing well. Dollar will weaken, and people assume they're going to need digital gold, so that is Bitcoin. Whereas Ethereum is a layer one for everything. It tracks ownership. You can have your house on the blockchain, your car on the blockchain, you could have your kids on the blockchain, you could have your birth certificate on the blockchain. It's really just a way to have ownership or truth be put on chain for anything. Beyond that, it enforces agreements. And so I said, right, if I said I was going to launch my own project, and I said we're going to go out and buy farms, let's all go, and fundraise together as a group to go buy farms. Smart contracts would mean that you all would have to say yes, I agree. We could have what they call multi-signature. And so, yes, Daria.
I didn't understand what you mean. You could put the birth certificate on the blockchain.
What that means is, like I mentioned earlier, like non-fungible tokens and fungible tokens. And so you could put your deed on the
Fungible.
blockchain. You could put your deed on the blockchain, for example. And what it would be is just like it would be a certificate that states that you own that house. And now that certificate of ownership is on the blockchain. And so if you were to transfer that to someone else, then that person would have your deed, as opposed to having a physical deed that could be burned or lost or stolen. And now all of a sudden you have a digital copy of that thing. And so your birth certificate.
Oh,
Mhm.
I get it. I understand. Yes.
And
Okay.
so your birth
Thank you.
certificate being on chain doesn't mean someone else can have your birth certificate, but it does mean that all of a sudden it can be tied to your online identity, and you can have a way to preserve it and own it without ever, having it be in danger or something of that nature is what I would say.
Yes,
Mhm.
I got it. Thank you.
And so the multi-signature component I was speaking to essentially means that certain contracts will only execute when we're in agreement that we want to execute them. And so it's like almost like an escrow, which means that, one of us doesn't have ownership of it. We all collectively have some say. And if things don't go exactly how we say they want them to go, we can always reverse our choice, and withhold our capital. And all of a sudden now anyone can build applications on the internet with financial infrastructure anywhere in the world. And I can set up an online store where I run this course, and anyone anywhere can pay me in crypto and participate, as opposed to people who maybe don't have access to credit cards or US accepting credit cards. Like when I was in Nigeria, for example, I couldn't use any credit cards. And so I ended up using crypto pretty recurrently to be able to off ramp. And it allowed me to participate right in the economy. Whereas with my existing tools, I would not have been able to. There was no Apple Pay to use. And all of that without a middleman, right? And so even though I'm off ramping, maybe I'm off ramping through someone, I'm able to get like what the market value is, right, for my crypto. And so people are betting that in the long term, stocks will be on chain on Ethereum. People are betting that our houses, real estate, they call them real world assets, will be on chain. Even institutions like banks are coming on chain, right? And so the vision is that they will be using this infrastructure as like their ledger for what is truth and where is value stored. And it's going to save them a whole lot more money because they transact a whole lot more in the world than we do as individuals. All right. Thank you. So what's a smart contract? Oh, freelance escrow. So I just kind of went through this. But yeah, and so essentially it means that a client deposits into the contract, right? It says a freelance escrow. So I say I'm going to wash your car. You put money in the contract. I wash your car. You approve that the car is washed, and then that money is released to me, as opposed to, right, you give me the money and then hoping I'll do it. It's kind of what Miriam spoke to earlier. Now there's no trust component. If I don't wash your car or your car comes back like I crashed it, like I just went and joyroad your car instead of washing it. Now all of a sudden, you can withhold that payment and I won't receive it. But assuming that it is met, right, it would be automatically distributed. Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, I'm just trying to understand. So it works like an escrow account. It's not. I'm just trying. It's not actually
Yeah,
a
perfect.
written contract. It doesn't work like a written contract. Is it what you're saying?
So so it's a contract that self-executes. So that's the difference, right? Like a written contract is a contract that you, me, or some other person has to enforce. The smart
Mm-hmm.
contract is automatically enforced when certain conditions are met.
Mm-hmm. For instance, when you say client approves or
Mhm.
deadline passes, let's imagine that the deadline passes, but I'm not satisfied with, I mean, whatever term of the contract is, it would automatically execute.
No, so but you would have to sign it to say that you approve. So if you don't approve it, it won't execute. And so then it
Okay, so
becomes like a
okay,
different issue, but your money hasn't been spent. So you might like not pay me, and now I've been robbed for doing work. That's a different problem than me robbing you because I didn't do the work.
So you have a set of conditions, and in addition to that, the parties have to take a specific action.
Hmm.
Okay. So it's just not completely automatic. It's like you have the conditions, and I also have to do something to approve or disapprove.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Um, and so
Thank
like
you.
yeah, once maybe it's like when a certain time passes, the payment would process, or when you sign it manually. But those conditions would be established prior to you putting your money in the escrow, prior to you participating in the contract. And so that's what makes it a
And
smart contract, is that it self-executes when certain conditions are met. Go ahead.
and who or how do you create the conditions, or who creates? How do you create the conditions for a smart
So there,
contract?
so a smart contract is a piece of code. So an engineer would write
Mm-hmm.
it out, or you could use an AI to write it out, but it would be coded into
Okay.
what you're participating in. And so you'd say, "Oh, I want to interact with this contract," and that contract would be like same way you logged into this. You'd say, "I want to interact with this web app," right? And so it's just like this a similar thing. You're choosing to interact, and once you do that, you're kind of the code initiates, and then there's a cascading, amount of things which follow, and they're automatically self-executing. And does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
Hmm.
I mean, we need to see how it works in reality, but conceptually it makes sense.
Okay, well, I got that. Well, let's just jump forward. So I think this programmable infrastructure will help you get a bigger picture, right? And so before the iPhone, right, there were these different devices with way more limited functionality. But now with the iPhone, all of a sudden we can do a whole lot more things, and just with smartphones in general, right? So let's go to okay, I don't want that. I thank you. And so uh, the premise is that now people can design all new kinds of applications, right? And so smart contracts can compound into applications. And so, for example, on Instagram, right, or Facebook Marketplace, I think Facebook Marketplace is a great example because you could say, oh, I'm selling this car, I'm selling these chairs, and people could say, oh, I want to come and get that thing, right? And so then maybe someone puts their money in escrow. Like to hold their spot per se, and they get there, they meet the person, and if it's actually what they want, then they can choose to confirm the purchase, and the money would then go through. But the person knows they're not wasting their time because you've actually put the money in the thing and you showed up, right? And so it operates as a way for, or say there isn't like customer service, but the premise is that all of a sudden now these applications can exist as like we don't need a Facebook to have Facebook Marketplace, right? Now all of a sudden the infrastructure for being able to buy and sell is leveraging the blockchain, and any website can have those kinds of components built in. They can have its own internal escrow component built in, and we participate in buying these things. You know immediately, right, that what you're participating in. And what I would even say beyond that, right, is like people use these for loans as well. And I think a loan is actually an even better example because you can say I'm going to put I have $1,000 and I'm going to put $1,000 into this account, and then I want to get a loan against this, right? Um, and I'm gonna, with that loan, borrow $800 of Ethereum, right? And if the price of Ethereum goes to a certain price, right, then my loan will be liquidated, simply because, right, I have not restored it, or the value of my loan has now come to be the value of what I've taken out, as opposed to it being more than that. And so the smart contract component really just means that these things, like I said, are self-executing when certain conditions are met, in such a way that, the maybe the vulnerabilities which might exist for us or for the other actor are hedged against, such that, like you said, Miriam, we don't have to trust one another. We can just trust that the technology will do what it's designed to do. And when we participate from the outset, we know what it's designed to do, as opposed to having to worry about what someone will choose to do in the moment. Mhm. And so the premise here is that we're assuming that people will be building apps around the world, leveraging the blockchain, as opposed to leveraging like existing historical financial infrastructure like credit cards, Visa, PayPal, etc. And now we can go into some of Ethereum's use cases. So what's being built on Ethereum? So now I've kind of explained it as programmable infrastructure, like the iPhone had for the apps. Ethereum is the foundation for financial applications. So I just spoke to loans, for example. But then there's also coordination apps, right? Not companies, but these things called DAOs. And so I mentioned earlier, for example, I could launch my own community and say we're going to buy a farm. That's a perfect example. It doesn't have to be a farm, right? But we could launch a collective endowment and say we're each going to put in $100. And then we could say, put up proposals. So I propose we spent $50 this month on a new mailbox for our neighborhood community council or community watch. And people could say that's a stupid spend of $50. You only have $500. I don't think we should do that. And Miriam says, no, I think a brand new mailbox would attract a lot of new homeowners. I think we could attract the right crowd. This could be the perfect investment. And you can still put it up, but now Ray and Daria get to vote on that proposal and even mark on chain what their reasoning is. And so now all of a sudden we have a mechanism for governance and decision making collectively, which requires us to hit a certain level of consensus for certain actions to take place. And the smart contract would have it set such that, and one second, Miriam, that maybe you need 75% right of the vote. So it can't just be me, Maceo, that made the organization that says, well, this is my thing, we have to go for it. But maybe it's like 50%. And so even if I have 30% of the vote, like just, yeah, I would still need someone else in the organization to vote in agreement with me. And the organization from the outset could choose, right, what quorum is. So quorum meaning, what is a passing vote? And so, yeah, that's the way that people can make decisions in a new way. Like it could be organizational governance, it could be a co-op. You could think corporate governance with shareholders and stakeholders, right? And so this is just a new way to be able to participate in that using the blockchain. And it's even possible, right, that you can see apps here, right? These apps can actually be like Facebook is not an app which we govern. We can buy stock in Facebook and still not have much of a say. We can own, unless you own a very outsized amount of Facebook, you don't really have much of a say. But all of a sudden, right, we can design new governance mechanisms for applications which are on the internet outside of the corporate paradigm. That's the language I would use. And now anyone anywhere in the world can own how these apps own and have a say on how these apps might function, as opposed to like a select few who are in a certain region demographic or state of being capitalized. And then there's even identity apps, right? And so there are people who are working in real time to think about how can we create software which allows us to verify our identity without actually sharing our identity. So like maybe as opposed to having to share your driver's license when you go into a bar or something like that, or show your passport when you get on a plane, they'd be able to tap your Apple Watch. And it would go on the blockchain and check your wallet and see whether or not there's really an ID there that people can't see. And it would come back and say, yes, this person has a real world identification that they can't see, but that legitimizes you as true. So people in the world right now are designing infrastructure like that, such they don't have to tell people who they are, for them to know that you are of age or a certain citizen or something like that. And so I think that people can verify truths about you on this blockchain without those truths actually being made available to the whole world, which is about privacy. It's about maintaining privacy. And so these are right now some of the major use cases. People have also envisioned things around gaming, which I would say really haven't hit much of a mass quite yet of use. But Miriam, you were going to ask a question.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering about, when you were talking about the ownership apps and governance and voting, quorum, etc. So all of that is built in the system. So if let's imagine there's a co-op or something, and I own a token to that organization, how do I vote? I mean, is it built in the system a way to vote, to participate, or even to who gets to how to say, who gets to decide what we will be voting on? You see the whole conversation.
Yeah.
How does
No, it's
is it
perfect.
built in, or how does it work?
Yeah, it is built in exactly. And so it's one thing to launch a token. And you can use smart contracts to launch tokens and organizations, or you could just launch the organization, for example, and there can already be a token in circulation. And so if I were to launch like a co-op, and you already launched a coin, Miriam, you could say your token has 100 tokens. And I'm like, oh, I like that token. I really like Miriam. I really align with Miriam. I think the economy Miriam's building is an economy for the future. And honestly, I want that economy to be tied to how they make decisions over here at Maceo organization. And so I choose to make your coin our governance coin. And now whoever, you could say one example would be like whoever has the most like of that token now has the most say in my organization. But you could also have it be, right, there's this thing called a nowish DAO model where essentially every day they run an auction. And people like they vote on that auction and they win the auction, they get the token. And now like people who have they whatever percentage of the daily auction tokens they have will inform the amount of voting power they have in that organization. And so, and people who hold a certain number of those tokens can also propose how they spend that money. And so what you're voting on is determined by community interests, by community advocacy, and essentially like, right, people who have chosen to participate in this network saying these are the things that we think we should spend money on, spend resources on. And so like this is our quarterly budget, how I want to spend it, right? And you could have everybody in the community vote on that thing to ratify
And
that spending.
thank you for that. And where does that community communicate?
So it's up to the community, right? Some communities don't communicate at all anywhere.
Okay.
Some maybe they only communicate on like the board where they vote. Here I can take you to here so you can see an example. Okay. Oh my gosh. So this is a DAO called Headline DAO. And so DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, but the whole point is it's really just an on-chain co-op, right? And so every day this organization, they sell one of these tokens for anywhere from $2, $1 to $50 some days. And this organization was established as an experiment in decentralized journalism. And so their goal is to fund crypto journalists. And whereas there's another organization called Nouns, which focuses on funding what they call nounish things, this is all about crypto journalism. And this organization actually, they don't have a group chat, they don't have anything, right? You can see I hold 3 tokens, my voting power is 3 tokens. You can see there's this person called Lore Giver, they have 50 tokens almost. This other person has 40 tokens. And so this is obviously not a very balanced democracy because I only have 3 votes and this person has 40 votes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, you can come up here and be able to see what we call the feed. And so in the feed, you can actually see proposals people have made. You can see the auctions that have run and who's won those auctions. And so High Five has won the last several auctions, right? And they come in here and they buy these tokens because they believe in the long term, this is an organization they want to have a say in. Maybe they believe that Ethereum's price will go up. And it's like, well, I'd much rather get this token today at a low price than be paying for it at a high price. And Extents will have an outsized say. And then here you can see the treasury. And so the treasury offers, there's 13, almost $14,000 in this treasury, which I can vote on the spend of, which is just under 7.5 ETH. And the total sales of the auction are right only this much, which means that the difference was money sent to this DAO from the beginning. It wasn't money that the DAO fundraised. And so I could send money to this DAO at any point in time, right? This is the wallet address for the treasury. I could say, I want to be generous and I want to donate to the DAO like you donate to your college, right? Or something like that, or to your school. And then that money would go in there. And then here you can see like this is a proposal that I put up. So I put up a proposal like you see my proposal did not get any votes. But I put a proposal to actually fund me coming here to Denver to shoot some content. I was asking for just under $6,000. And I'm working on this podcast series. So I want them to fund some media like support or like post-production and social media management for my podcast, as well as funding for me to come here to Denver and shoot content and do journalism. And so these are the kind of things you could propose, right? You could say, I think the community would align with this, right? And the community can then say yes or no, right? And so here you can see the votes broken down over time. This person said, after reviewing the most recent proposal, I see some community members from Either Media have previously gotten funding and continuing to distribute funds to this community could raise concerns unless those deliverables happen. So some people who have been in my existing community had discovered this DAO before myself, essentially, and gotten some money to do some journalism. And so whether or not that's what I do, right? People here were questioning the legitimacy of me as an actor and whether or not I would do what I would do because they're like, oh, are these people coming to spend our money or take our money? Right. And so people voted against the proposal. And so that's this. I hope that gives you like a better picture of it,
Yeah, no,
right?
thank you. Yes, it's it makes it more, yeah.
Mhm.
I was just wondering how people were interacting with each other.
No, it's perfect, right? And then down here, I was just going to say you can see like I can post updates as well to the DAO community or to the organization saying, this is what I'm up to. This is what's new. My proposal didn't go through, and I got angry, and I posted this. And this is me then posting my update anyway after that, right? And so it's just supposed to be a tool for enabling like decision making collectively in a new way. Now where did my slides go? Okay, we're back. I like that.
Thank
That
you.
give you a bigger, yeah, absolutely. That's what I would say is for me one of the most exciting things about crypto, right? Is that that DAO could have, as opposed to having those tokens which auction off every day, right? That DAO could be like they could have a community currency, right, which you could spend at the grocery store, right? And so, like Philadelphia could launch a token, Philadelphia City's so the city where I'm from, and then everybody in the community could be spending in that token as opposed to spending in the US dollar, for example. And then we could say like, oh, well, even without spending this money, as long as I hold enough of it, I could vote on how our city spends money, or I could even see how our city spends money, right? And all of a sudden, it's a whole different environment. You could say, I want to see some of our money be printed this year to go towards the roads or towards public schools or towards healthcare, and you could vote on whether or not we actually print new money as a city and things like that. And so it actually offers us more transparency and control over our economy, and we get to coordinate more as an organization and as a community as opposed to having your right resources be things that are coordinating without really any of our input or control. Yeah, Daria.
Okay, Miriam is asking some really cool questions.
Hmm.
I am going to ask a basic one coming out
Please.
from what she asked. So you're buying in US dollars, correct?
So not necessarily, right? So like on the last page I showed you, people would be buying those tokens in Ethereum, right? So they're just buying in the blockchain's native currency,
Right.
but it's up to the
In,
organization.
in native currency. Good. And those and they are equivalent to US dollars.
Yeah, they're exchangeable for US dollars.
They're exchangeable for US dollars. Okay. Okay. When you say that, the second question, when you say that cities, you can see whether cities are printing money,
Hmm.
what do you mean?
So what I was saying was that if a city were to launch its own currency on the blockchain, then as opposed to a dollar, you can't see exactly where the dollar is going or how it's moving. All of a sudden, the city's finances would be completely transparent, right? And so maybe as opposed to the city giving you food stamps, which is like government subsidized some like card to go buy food, maybe they just push additional money to your wallet every month, right? From their currency. That's what I was saying. And that could be a way to circumnavigate having to go to this office and do all of these things. Now, all of a sudden, all of this money can be controlled online, and that they still actually have the money in their own custody, but you're able to spend it and things like that. Does that make sense?
Yes. So you're talking about a city in the real world,
It was a hypothetical, yes, that a city could launch its own currency while still having dollars. The
hypothetically.
whole the
Yeah,
whole city
I
could
got
still
it.
operate in Bitcoin or in a different currency.
Yeah, I got it completely. Thank you.
And the only thing I was adding there was right that stuff could be tied to governance, and so it could be that everybody who has a Philadelphia birth certificate could actually have a vote on how we spend money, the same way we vote on like our local officials and things like that. And so it's just like it creates opportunities for new governance mechanisms, as opposed to like the very non-technical ones we participate in right now, which are very social and require trust. Okay. And so here we have DeFi, finance without banks. And so DeFi is kind of what I was speaking about earlier in terms of being able to take out loans. And so now all of a sudden you can lock collateral in a smart contract and borrow instantly and pay interest on Ethereum, right? All without ever having to do anything besides get on your computer. You don't have to verify who you are. It just means that if something happens and the value of your money goes down or you're not able to pay it back, it'll just disappear off into the internet. But the premise is that now people in different parts of the world who didn't have access to loans, all of a sudden can accumulate capital and have access to lines of credit, or loans. It's not the same as line of credit, right? That they otherwise wouldn't have had access to without just spending their money themselves. And the key difference, right, is that it's the code enforcing this as opposed to bankers. So if you don't pay it back in 30 days, the code will simply execute, your money's gone, and you have the $800 you borrowed, but the $1,000 that you locked up is no longer yours to touch. So you've lost that $200, because you didn't repay it in time. Mhm. And right now it says here, right, there's billions of dollars locked in DeFi protocols. And so people are looking at new ways to gain interest. There's been a lot of conversation actually about how some platforms like Coinbase or other platforms are offering 4 or 5, 6, 7% yield which is interest, right, on US dollars, which means that people around the world who ordinarily would put their dollars in banks are all of a sudden going online, which is meaning that cryptocurrency, right, and this technology is competing now with banks for where dollars are actually held and stored, right? And banks want your money so they can leverage it in financial products, loan it outright, and make money on your money. And so instead of doing now all of a sudden we have these new protocols, which are there's certainly you could say making money, but it's more often than not it's other people somewhere else in the ecosystem who are making money as opposed to the protocol itself. All right. And next slide. Are there any questions about that? Nope. All right. Well, beyond finance, right, there's also the creator economy. So NFTs, I mentioned, or how I got into this space. And so I was really wondering, like, oh, wow, would musicians be able to make money off of the blockchain somehow? Would this disrupt the organizational structure of the music industry? You think of all the writers going on strike in Hollywood, right? Could this be a new way for them to coordinate or organize unions? And or even just get paid, right? And so there's this whole creator economy side of crypto, which has kind of come and gone. That ended up just being a lot of people gambling on artists and a lot of people pretending to be artists that get gambled on, and just a lot of people pretending. Honestly, it did not become an art collector's market. But then we just talked about DAOs and governance, right? There's also opportunities, right, for people to build projects where they can have new kinds of governance mechanisms to leverage the blockchain. Someone put a message here in the chat. I need to hop off. All right, Mom, I got that. Thanks for being here. And it's also, like I said, conversations about identity and gaming, etc. And so one thing I would add down here about the identity component is that now your reputation can even be tracked, right? And so maybe you can say, oh, I am 21. I can go in the bar, but it could also say this person tends to get in fights at bars, right? And so it could say like, alert, alert, this person is 21, but also a risk. And so there's new ways that this technology can allow people to get information that wouldn't have otherwise been available. All right. And then so you can notice the pattern, right? All these use cases, it's all about removing the middlemen. And the bet of Ethereum, right, is that by removing the middlemen, we can actually reduce the amount of extraction that's happening industry to industry. Here, give me 1 second. Okay. Third. All right, thanks. I'm just texting my roommate. Or my friend who I'm staying with rather. And so the next section is security. And yeah, go ahead, Miriam. I see your hands up.
So just, these are really, interesting and important information. DeFi and beyond finance. I will definitely watch the recording again and do some more research. But I'm just thinking on the macro. With everything that you're sharing, I'm really thinking at the macro level because I live in the Ivory Coast in West Africa, and what I hear that is possible, and especially when I look at how difficult it is for African countries to finance their own development because of the currencies. I'm thinking about the IMF or the World Bank. Sometimes you have sanctions in place or they default on certain sovereign loans, so it makes it way more difficult to access in international financial market. What I see that could be possible, and I don't know if it has been tested, would be if we take project by project. Let's imagine you have a bridge or a power plant or a big infrastructure to build somewhere in a country. You could potentially have access to DeFi and present a project. And I would say a community could fund that project based on the quality of the project rather than, I would say, the country or other parameters. I'm just speculating here. I don't know what it is right now, but it seems that would be possible at the macro level.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. So if you have more, even books or more information on DeFi and beyond finance, that you can share on the chat, really, I would love that.
Okay.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
I can do that. I just sent a message. Go ahead, Daria.
Sorry, that's exactly my interest. What I'm trying to effect here is um, a particular projects investing in Burkina Faso from
Mhm.
Barbados. So hence my questions about how to buy and who can access. That's exactly what I'm doing.
How to buy and who can access what?
Oh, that was a previous question, Maceo. How do I buy? You answer that.
Hmm.
And then the video and everybody else was answering this morning how people access particular accounts, if you will.
Mm, like the
If
wallets,
I,
yeah.
exactly. Wallets, sorry, not accounts.
It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry. I understand what you mean. I know the language is
Yeah.
new. We can call it accounts.
Yeah.
But you were asking that about that in regards to investing in Burkina Faso. I didn't understand what your question was.
projects in projects in Burkina Faso. I was agreeing with Miriam or aligning with Miriam. Um, I had no idea that she was in Africa, but what my interest in this entire in the Bitcoin scenario is really how to invest in projects in Burkina Faso.
Okay. Well, I think that's excellent. So, I mean, I think the way that it would best function, right, where if you were to begin coordinating with people who are already doing projects in Burkina Faso, and saying like, look, this is a new mechanism by which you could fundraise, right? And so to answer your question, Miriam, right, some like people could spin up an organization, and people could deposit funds into that organization, and in return for those funds, they could receive like governance tokens. And it could be that people only spend money when this project hits certain milestones, right? At certain milestones, these funds are distributed, and if those like uh milestones aren't hit like at a certain time frame, right, then those funds will be redistributed back to people who put up their money. And so all of a sudden, it leverages that infrastructure of trust, to be able to actually do project management and oversight in a way that makes those resources available while also still maintaining the integrity of the project, right? As opposed to just like
Mm.
saying we're going to fundraise and then distribute it and then never see it again, maybe never see the actor again. Right now, this escrow operates as that kind of vehicle. Or maybe it's even that, right, at each interval, you all reevaluate what the next steps are, right? And then you put up a proposal for spending, and then at some point, you all decide like, oh, this entity to build schools in Burkina Faso, with this endowment is defunct, and we want to, withdraw all of our money. But in the meantime, right, you all could put that money there. You could even put an account that gets interest and only spend the interest, right, on developing schools every year. And you all are actually voting on that. And so there's different mechanisms by which you can do it. And then all that they would need there is someone who's willing to accept, right, cryptocurrency for their local currency, right? And so you can assert that there's some wealthy person and in most countries at this point who has cryptocurrency and is happy to get like paid a little bit more than what it's worth, in order to sell it. And people make money doing that as arbitrage at scale. But there's also these different applications, right, where people can interact without ever knowing who they're doing the exchange with. I don't know what the policy landscape is like there, or if there are like apps like Rainbow or Coinbase where it's easy to on-ramp and off-ramp. But in markets where it's not, generally it's a peer-to-peer market where you'd find someone who's willing to swap. The same way, if you wanted to get your local currency for a foreign currency, you'd hope someone will do that for you.
Mm. And the
Uh,
way, sorry,
are
Daria,
you
are you
okay?
complete?
Yes, please. Thank you.
And I was just wondering the way the course is structured at the end, we get to create a project or something. Is it correct, Maceo?
I
The
didn't hear your
way
question, sorry.
I see the way your course is structured. So at
Hmm.
the end of I think it's section 4 or 5, we
Hmm.
get to create our own project or something like that, or present
Hmm.
a project. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it can be either one. If you want, if you want to set something up, I can help you set something up. If you just want to
Mm-hmm.
have a slideshow, you can have a slideshow. But the goal is for you to be able to understand what tools you would use, how it would
Mm-hmm.
work. And if you wanted to, you can invite people to come participate with you and play a game. You could create a game in the world around your own organization.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so earlier we talked about like the public and private key. I do want to acknowledge that this is meant to be a 2-hour session and that we've now arrived at 2 hours. And so if you ladies need to go, you're welcome to go. But I'm gonna finish going through the slides, so they'll be in the recording.
Okay, and I won't ask any questions until the end, just so that we can go through all the slides.
I got that. All right. So this is about the private key and public key. And so with your private key, which many people call your seed phrase, right? You should never share with anyone. You should really only share it offline. Like now with the cloud, many people don't really want to have to deal with their seed phrase. And so you can back it up in your iCloud, and like you're going to use your same iCloud account on every iPhone you have. And so it is relatively secure. But historically, right, people have always done it by writing it down. And if someone asks you for this private key, essentially it's almost 100% a scam because it means they want to have access to control of your funds and your assets. And if you lose it, your funds are gone forever. So even though I tried to mine Bitcoin in high school, I wrote down like a 12-word phrase on some notebook and I have no idea where it is. And so whatever my computer was doing, it doesn't matter because that stuff is lost to the ether. But that's why it pays to start small, really not be putting a whole lot of money into your wallet right when you begin, but really just taking opportunities to experiment. Okay. And I'm gonna go to the next slide. I wish this bar wasn't here. Okay, I'm just gonna make it so I can't see you all. And I'll put this on the side like this. Okay. We go back. Okay. So this is just a real scam, right? And so the person, they receive an email that says verify your wallet to claim rewards. The fake website looks identical to the real Coinbase. The person enters their seed phrase and immediately they lose access to it. Um, and so what this says to do is to always make sure you're on the right website link the same way, right? You can look up Google and end up on google.ai instead of google.com, and that cannot be where you want it to be, right? You can end up downloading a virus. It's kind of similar, but in this case, the virus is not a virus that's trying to interrupt your computer, but actually a virus is trying to take your money. And so that's something to really be wary of. And beyond that, you might end up just seeing like fake transactions, like links that take you places. But then when you go to, you don't even, that maybe it won't even ask you to put in your private key. It could just ask you to sign a transaction. But that transaction could give that application authority over your assets all of a sudden. And so you're signing away ownership, even if you didn't know that's what you were doing. And so there's really a lot of things to be wary of because there are a lot of people looking to exploit newcomers to this space, which I would say is definitely a shame. Okay. And so why does crypto get hacked from an economic perspective? Um, right. I think it's just really a high value targets. And so there's this big incentive for people to go after this, like after people in their wallets, right? People have millions of dollars, billions of dollars, right, in crypto. And so being able to create links online that many people might accidentally interrupt. Like I know one person here in Denver, they got robbed like $3,000 because, right, there's all these different events going on, and they got sent a link to a fake event. And so they connected to it, and that fake event ended up actually draining their wallet. And so a lot of people have these concerns that they're going to lose their money in this way. And so even though you might think you're doing everything you need to do, it's not the tech is failing us, but it's actually that it's a human error, which is allowing us to find ourselves in a position of encountering fraud. Okay. Mhm. Um, the I know we've kind of stopped and answered questions, so I'm going to skip over this. Mm, This thing does not like to work with me. Hmm. 5 minute break. So Ethan, the real world. Okay. So the first corner is speculation. A lot of people look at crypto as a giant casino. And I tell people it is a giant casino. Honestly, right? There's people who are on like gambling websites, but then there's also people who are just trading, right? And their goal is not to wonder whether or not crypto will go up or go down. They just know that it will go up and it will go down. And then they can potentially make money off of arbitraging between those things. So people are speculating, entertainment, So people maybe they just have money, they like to go to the casino and gamble for entertainment. They do the same thing online now. If you've seen there's this thing called Poly Market, where people are actually gambling now on real world events. And so there was a lot of people gambling on who the president of the United States would be ahead of Donald Trump's reelection. And so some people were gambling, oh, it'll be Bernie Sanders, it'll be Joe Biden. It was a few people who were already gambling it would be Kamala Harris before Joe Biden stepped down, and she went up as a Democratic nominee. And so some people were positioned to make an outsized return if that actually became true before, because right, Joe Biden was no longer in the running at all. And so everybody who was gambling on Joe Biden becoming president immediately lost, which means that right, the actual pot went up substantially. And so people all over the world are using crypto to gamble on all new kinds of realities. There were some guys here the other night, and they're working on a project which is like a platform where you can bet on whether or not flights will be delayed. And so it's going in and assessing data for what kinds of factors will have a flight be delayed or not. And all of a sudden, right, people are able to make money off of gambling on those things. And so there's even right the word meme coins here. And so have you ever heard of Dogecoin? Dogecoin is a meme coin. A meme coin is generally a token that has no utility. There's no thing that you can do with it. You could just buy it and hold it. And if you do that, you'll probably see it go down in value because nobody else in the world is just buying it and holding it who has any sense. And no pun intended. And so it's really a lot about speculation. Even I mentioned earlier, the whole art scene before was a world of speculation. People who were either hoping they could get rich off of being early to a Picasso or a Monet or a Van Gogh or a musician like Burna Boy or Chris Brown or Beyonce, and hoping that if I collect their art and fund them, I'll be able to ride their coattails to fame and wealth. But many of those same artists were people who were like not consistent artists, but saw an opportunity to potentially monetize being an artist, right? By putting stuff out on chain. And so people who were, not really art enthusiasts consistently, met up with people who were not really artists consistently, and they all speculated on whether or not they could make money together by doing that. And lo and behold, that was not a very sustainable flywheel because people who wanted to pretend to be art enthusiasts discovered that they were losing money buying art from artists who didn't really have a long-term vision of how they were going to create their art careers. And so some artists were supported and they left good taste in some people's mouths, and some people were supported and left bad taste in people's mouths. But there are way worse projects than that. There are NFT projects that said they were going to be DAOs, so these community projects, and then just ended up, being these art projects that sold out and never did anything. So there's a lot of room for scamming, and as I said, it is gambling at the end of the day. And I'm going to try and speak a little bit more slowly. And so corner two is the creator economy. And so, like I mentioned, right, there were a lot of artists that weren't really consistent creatives. But there are also some musicians, right, who are working in the traditional music industry. They're going to open mics every week. They're putting out music, and they're not making any money, right? And so now, as opposed to, having their music be on Spotify and they're making, less than $100 a year, they're actually able to find a community of people who are like, wow, I love this artist. I'll buy your NFT, I'll buy your song for $100 a piece. And so now all of a sudden these artists have access to $100 times however many people will collect that one song. And that potentially can be money to fund a project, an album release, a recording session, things like that. And so what it did was all of a sudden give artists the opportunity to connect with people who weren't necessarily art collectors, but were maybe patrons of the art. So maybe people who contribute to orchestras, right, or donate to squat choirs, things like that. All of a sudden, people with that kind of interest could support individuals and have an outsized impact, as opposed to giving money to these organizations and having an impact that's a lot less discernible. And that is how I actually got my funding in this space. Was I had like an arts patron who saw what I was doing and wanted to support my podcast, and ended up giving me over $100,000 over the course of 2 years to go and create my project, my media platform. And so the creator economy is a real side of crypto alongside speculation. I just think they have historically gone hand in hand, and that the creator economy hasn't quite lasted or seen sustained participation is actually the terms I would use. And then we come to governance, right? So I just showed you all how the nouns DAO model works, where people can mint a token every day from the auction. So token holders vote, smart contracts execute. There's no central person in charge. It's groups of people who are in charge, and those who have the most votes have the most say. And that incentivizes people to want to get more votes. So, right, the actors who they might assert don't have the best interest of the community in mind, don't end up with an outsized portion of say in how things operate. And the most beautiful thing is that there's no bank or government that can shut these these organizations down, even though they do have funding, because that money is on the blockchain. And anyone anywhere in the world can choose to participate. So you can be on an international board for the spending of $100 or $1 or any amount in between. Okay. And so now I'll give you the complete picture. And so yeah, many people they come into crypto through speculation. They see the creator economy, they see governance, they see scams, and all of these things are different parts of being in crypto. But what's important to understand is the big picture and how you want to participate. And so, are you someone who wants to gamble? If you want to gamble, there's a corner for gamblers. There's a new thing to gamble on every week. People know that people are going to be here gambling no matter what because they want to get rich quick and they don't know how to do it. And so there's a market there for that. If you want to be a creator and discover how that stuff works, there's a corner crypto for that. A lot of creators now, instead of getting NFT collections they're minting, are actually participating in these different organizations, and these organizations are focused on funding creators. And so people are now using new mechanisms for crowdfunding and governance. And then obviously there's scams. And with scams, the best thing to do is just to really be attentive and ideally not get robbed. And so from what I've said so far, is there anything that's clicking or not clicking? Or yeah, just what's clicking and what's not clicking?
Everything's clicking.
Okay, I like that.
I would say
But that
conceptually
could be
it's
because it's
clicking.
so new.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Daria.
No, Miriam, I'm saying it's clicking, I think, but it's so new that I don't know if it's not clicking.
I get that.
Yes, a lot of information, very valuable information that is clicking right now and conceptually. So
Okay.
in
Well, I'm glad that
practice, I don't know what it would look like.
I appreciate that it's clicking now. That means I'm doing some of this right. I have it. This is a little bit less organized than I would have liked. I was thinking to have a guest speaker, another friend come in, like kind of speak to some of these things, and he just has gone out of communication with me. And so I'm taking it on myself. And I don't have any qualms with that. It's just I am not practiced speaking about particular things. And this is the opportunity to get practiced. So I'm glad that things are clicking anyway. And so, right, how to evaluate a crypto project, right? And so, is there underlying value? What does the problem solve if it's out to solve a problem? And who benefits from that problem being solved, right? No business that doesn't solve a problem or meet somebody's needs is going to last very long. And can I see what's been built? So is there an actual product or just a promise, right? Is somebody saying they're going to build houses here in Denver, build farms, or do they actually have a track record of building farms so that, we have the resources so that if we give us $100, we'll actually end up being, right, in a farm. Maybe it's being invested in livestock, something of that nature, right? As opposed to me saying, oh, I know how to build farms. You give me $100 million and like, I'm gonna go figure out how to build farms and how much it costs, right? And so what happens? And so, is there an actual product, right, or just promises? These are kinds of things that you should be assessing for as you look at projects, because if they say they're going to solve a problem and you have no idea how they're going to solve it, or they have no primitive that's already solving it, then that's a big red flag. And what happens if the price goes to zero? So even if people stop gambling on this project, or even on this token, on this project's token, right, does it continue to provide value, right? And so even if we could say like I launch a token and I say I'm going to build farms. Whether or not my token goes to zero, I could still be building farms. But maybe people who buy those tokens are able to earn some commission, right, every week for how much money these farms make. And so even if nobody wants to buy that token, right, there still is an opportunity to have exposure to profits of this farm, right? And so that's a different thing than if the token goes to zero and I say, well, if this token goes to zero, I'm not buying any more chickens. I'm done farming because I don't have any money to do it. And so those kinds of things are kind of what showcase uh, what a project with value and long-term commitment to creating value looks like, as opposed to a project that's really focused on trying to get you to gamble on their potential. Projects don't want you to gamble on their potential are assuming that they're just part of the casino. That's what I would say. It's a mirage. It's a mirage of an investment opportunity. And there are millions and millions of fake investment opportunities in crypto. Okay. Did that land for you all as like things to be attentive to? Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the next section is pattern recognition. So let's test your pattern recognition. And this is how we're going to wrap up today. Okay. Hmm. Um, So I guess I lied. I can't see you, but I guess I lied. There is no pattern recognition section. I think that I took it out by accident when I took out my friend. And so if you're just starting, the things that I would encourage you all to do, you both to do, being you two are here, right, is to start with use case. So if you see a crypto project that you think is that you see is interesting, what's the problem it's solving? What value is it out to create? And then get interested in how does it do that, and how does this token fit into that? And that'll give you a whole new way to start thinking about how organizations, solutions, and this technology intersect, which is really what's exciting. Next, I would say learn by doing, not by studying. So here we are talking about it all, Miriam, and it's great that you now have a intellectual concept of it. But getting involved in these kinds of communities, right, where you can actually start investing in things or start voting on things, I think those are real opportunities to start participating in new, meaningful ways. And the best way to do that is to find your community. And so, right, when I got into crypto, being here at ETH Denver, there are people who are thinking about how can finance fund sustainable initiatives? How can it fund offsetting carbon emissions and like impact on the environment? And so how can finance be used to fund environment restoration is a big question, right? As opposed to banks making billions of dollars and investing in making more billions of dollars, right? Could those removing the bank as the middleman, could we start to program banks which are always already investing in public goods, right? And so a lot of people who are interested in public goods funding at scale around the world using this technology. And it's important to know which corner you're in at any time, right? And so, am I in the creator economy corner? Am I in the gambling corner? And you don't know it. You want to know if you're in the gambling corner. And the best way to know that is to see what are people talking about in the communities that you're in. Are they talking about the price action, the token? Are they talking about problems being solved? Are they talking about how they're coordinating, right? Those kinds of conversations will really inform the kind of people let you get a read on the kind of people you're surrounding yourself with. Mhm. And I just encourage you all to be patient because the learning curve is steep. But one of the best things about a course like this or community around you is that you actually get to navigate that learning curve and company. Oh, wow, imagine. So you can see the left side of my screen, but if I put this here almost, right, I think you can't.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, that's not what I want. Um, okay, well, you can't see my screen anymore, which is great. So, so an example of a potential scam. So Moon Dogecoin, no, I don't want you to see. This project has the potential to return you 100x the value you put in. Do you think that's a real project or a scam?
It sounds too good to be true.
Well, that's exactly how they get you the opportunity. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and the next project, right, it's called shitcoin, literally, and it says we're a meme coin. Price will probably go to zero. We believe in memes. Is it a fake project or a real project?
Great.
No, it's actually a real project because they tell you exactly what they do. They have no business model. They're just there for the fun. And they're saying, come play in the fun casino. But it's a casino. Casino is a real business. But instead of them pretending to be something they're not, right, they're telling you exactly what it is. And the difference is things that will say they're one thing and be something else are out to scam you, and things that are what they say they are real, but maybe not where you want to be in the first place. And so it's critical to
Nice.
be able to know those differentiating factors. And a lot of people spend hours gambling on meme coins and shit coins, so people call them too. While other people are like, "Oh, I absolutely will not do that," because I think it's a waste of time and energy. And so the third one is here. So Save World Coin is a revolutionary AI blockchain, which will soon solve climate change. The white paper is coming soon.
Hmm.
I know you can see my screen, so you can see the answer.
Yeah, it says you think it's probably a scam?
Hmm. and
Mhm.
and you can see these are the reasons why, right? It's buzzwords, it's vague promises, there's no reputation or track record or portfolio. And it's saying down here, these guarantees, this urgency, these are the red flags to look out for.
Mm-hmm.
And
And there
so
is no ask here.
there's no ask.
Yeah, they're just
Like
saying
it's
that they're going to publish a white paper.
yeah, yeah. But the thing is, none of them have asks, right? It's just like a thing you can click on. And so say
Ah,
like
okay.
it's a link to interact with what's likely an application with smart contracts that somebody's already deployed.
Okay.
And so you're assessing, is that the kind of thing I want to click on? Does that sound like an exciting crypto thing? Like many people
It
get
was
into
gas? It,
and so that concludes session 2, right? And so we didn't get to use crypto. We did get to
Mhm.
explore scams. We did explore how the blockchain works.
all right, darling.
We
Thank you.
yeah,
There is
no worry, Daria.
All right.
And we mapped some of the crypto use cases. And so that is the end of today's session.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's really great.
I appreciate that. And so in the next course, are these things still true? We'll discuss what people can own. Um, I'm actually gonna stop sharing my screen here because I'm not gonna say that's what
Mhm.
next. I think the next session will potentially not be that, given that I want us to kind of not focus so much on investment, right, in the third thing, but starting to design like what would be initiatives that we'd actually want to use. And so in the next session, we'll actually be using the AI to generate potential use cases for crypto. And then thinking about what stack we would use. If you want to launch an organization to fundraise for something, right, how would you use crypto to solve a problem that you have in mind? And then begin to experiment with those things. hmm
No, that would be great. Thank you. And is there any assignment?
And so the assignment, you set up your crypto wallet, which I'm happy about.
Mhm.
Um, and I appreciate you asking. Otherwise, the homework here, let me go back. It is a slide before this one. Is to send crypto to someone else.
You send it
I have,
to someone else.
yeah, if you
Okay.
have anyone else in your life with whom you can that has a crypto wallet, you're welcome to send them some crypto. You're welcome to go online and actually do research on crypto projects. So you can go out and find a Bitcoin or another token that really interests you, or you can Google like you guys are talking about, right? Like DeFi in the Ivory Coast or
Mhm.
projects in Burkina
Burkina
Faso.
Faso. Mhm.
I got there. Don't worry. I got there. Then you could look up like, or what does crypto in Burkina Faso look like? What does crypto in Cote d'Ivoire look like? And actually come back with some kind of sense, right, of what that landscape looks like, or what people are
Mhm.
building and why, or what people could be building. So that would
Mhm.
be your assignment.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you both for being here till the very end. 2.5 hours.
Thank you. I
Maceo.
mean, it's great content.
Okay. Miriam, where are you?
I'm in the Ivory Coast.
Oh, wonderful. Next door. Okay. Wonderful. Hi, neighbor. Um, Maceo.
Yes.
Um, so I can send the Bitcoin to somebody and they can have and give them the password. And so the two of us will have the password.
No. But you can't do that, but you shouldn't do that. You'd want them to have their own wallet. And then you'd be
Okay.
sending it to like that address, right? So you clicked copy, you'd have them click copy and send that to you, and then you'd be able to
Right.
send them some money. And so like you both already sent your wallets in there, so I'll just send you both like a
Yeah.
dollar, for example. And you two could send
Okay.
each other the dollar or send me the dollars back. I don't really care. It's just a dollar.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
that'll kind of give you a sense of how to like interact with it. But you will always need like so if an asset is on Ethereum, then you'll always need Ethereum in your wallet to be able to pay the gas fees. Um, and so if you're on
Mm.
Bitcoin, you always need Bitcoin to be able to pay the gas fees. And so you can end up with $3. But if you don't have any Ethereum, then you just have money that's sitting on a rock. Like you can't reach the rock; it's across the ocean. You can see it; it looks nice. You know it's there. You know it's yours. But until you get some Ethereum, you can't swim over there and touch it.
Can you
Got
send
it.
Maceo your public key so that we can maybe send you a dollar or something to see how it works
Yeah, yeah. I'll
Yes.
send you my public key. I'll post it in the chat as well.
in the chat?
Um,
Yeah.
But you have to put
Thank you.
money in it. So I don't
Yeah.
know how easy it is for you to put money in it yourself. So like I said, I'll send you a dollar too. So you can play
Okay.
with it
Okay.
yourself, but you'll have a starting
Yeah.
dollar to experiment with.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and what was I gonna
Thanks.
say? Oh, and Daria was on the TMLP with me, Miriam. And
Ah, okay.
so and so is Marianne's on TMLP with me as well. My mom's not TMLP. But Miriam, I connected with through Olga Daria, who was one of my coaches recently in the Power to Create when I was coaching. She was like my assistant head coach. And apparently the two of them had connected through Landmark a while ago. So I was just
Yeah.
sharing that context as well.
That's how that goes.
I'm grateful. Well, thank you to both of you. Do you have any additional questions or concerns or anything I can respond to in this moment?
No, that was great.
Not yet.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maceo.
Yeah, thank you both.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.